Hi guys, this is Debbie. Today I'm excited to share some fun holiday cards that I created using the Christmas Traditions new release from Spellbinders. The first card that I created uses the vintage holiday stamp set from Spellbinders. This has some nice cute little vintagey, is that a word? Vintagey stamps and a lot of really nice sentiments. I started off by stamping out the two main images on some watercolor paper and then changed my mind. So it's actually on some regular and some VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and then I am embossing that because I really like that crisp black raised edge whenever I'm doing a lot of my images. Then I went ahead and colored these up using some alcohol markers and just fussy cut out that pretty lady that has done some shopping. Then I grabbed out another die set from Spellbinders. I'll leave a link to everything down below. And I'm just using the circle. I actually have thought about using some other parts of it kind of as a backdrop, but when I saw this pattern paper that was in my stash, I thought that was perfect. So I am going to just kind of distress the edges a little bit of this brown and white piece of pattern paper, and I'm putting that on an embossed background panel with some foam tape. And then I'm going to position her so she's covering part but not the main sentiment that is part of that pattern paper. I thought that was really neat that I found one that just said "Let It Snow." That is just awesome, and it's been in my stash for a while. So I've also popped her up on some foam tape, and I'm adding her to the front of the card as well. Next, I decided I need a little bit more embellishment, so I grabbed out the holiday decorations die set that I showed you guys in a past video and cut out some of those pretty little snowflakes. Now I'm trimming down my main panel and decided, I need some more color on that gray. It just didn't quite pop. So I'm adding some blue ink with a with a blending brush and distressing the edges a little bit with the ink as well, and then I'm going over those raised edges of that embossed panel, and I love the way that one looked. Next, I'm just gluing that down onto a white card base and adding those little silver snowflakes that I cut out. As a final touch, I'm adding a few gems to the card as well, and that's going to finish up this first card. For my second card, I'm using the Holiday Florals Glimmer hot foil plate and die set, and I'm using the quick trimmer. You guys know I've had trouble with figuring out how to get my foil to cut right and not wasted and all of that good stuff. Well, I went ahead and bought the quick trimmer, and so far it seems to be working pretty well. And on this day that I recorded this, I got a lot of practice in because I am foiling pretty much everything. After foiling up that pretty poinsettia, I did go ahead and run that through my Gemini Junior die cutting machine, and the dies cut perfect. It looks awesome. After foiling and cutting everything out, I arranged everything on the front of a card panel to see kind of where I wanted it. Then I took out some press and seal that's going to hold it all in place while I do my final stamping. Using my stamp platform and just wanting to make sure that I get that sentiment right where I need it, I'm going to take up those little poinsettias, add some anti-static powder, and then I'm going to put down that stamp in the center of my card and emboss it all up. I noticed that the gold embossing was kind of getting lost on my white cardstock, so I'm adding some red ink basically to the center of my panel, splattering that a little bit with some water and with some DIY shimmer sprays. Then, because I wanted to fill in some of that extra space that's not going to be covered with my poinsettias, I added some green ink around the edges and then trimmed up the panel. Now I'm going to go ahead and just adhere that down to the front of a white card base and add my poinsettias. Here my poinsettia and pine boughs down, I'm just adding a little bit of foam tape across the back of those little pieces, and then I'm going to position it on the front of my panel. Now I'm doing one cluster at a time because it looks like I had a little extra space there, so I'm basically just adding some foam tape to the other side and putting it where I want that set. Now I'm going to add a little bit of embellishment. Included with this glimmer and die set are some little circles that I believe are supposed to be parts of those flowers. So I'm adding some that are in red along the edges of my card, and then some white in the center of those red poinsettias, and then I'm adding a few little gems, and that finishes up this card. For my final card, I'm using the Holiday Floral Background Glimmer Set. Now this one is similar to the florals, except it has basically a corner, two sides of a card panel already put together, and it's got all those florals on there. So I am again using my quick trimmer to cut out some of this red foil. The foils that I'm using today are from the Shimmering Holiday Variety Pack. And it looks like they do have those different rolls separately on the website now, which I think is really, really cool. I also decided to use this on a background that I had created a while back using my gel press, just because I wanted to use it up and I thought that this would be pretty. So I've added that foil on there in two different directions, so it's basically surrounding the entire panel, and then I'm going to add the sentiment on. To do that, I've got some mint tape on there that I'm attaching the sentiments to, and I've got it taped down sticky side up so that I can get those lined up just perfect. Then I'm going to add that on the front of my card using this lovely Starburst Glimmer Hot foil that's in that variety pack. That's going to go right in the center of my panel, and that is going to give a perfect touch. So one thing I've noticed when I was doing this is that the colors weren't popping the way that I wanted them to. So I'm adding some blue ink around the edges and covering up basically all of that red foil. The thing is, I'm not covering the foil, I'm actually coloring the cardstock, and the foil just pops. It just looks so nice. The ink I was using, though, I decided wasn't quite dark enough, so I'm using another distress ink that is darker, and I'm just running that around the edges completely. You can still see some of the texture, though, from that gel print that I did earlier, so I'm not losing any of that. I'm just kind of adding to it. And you can see, as I add that dark blue ink, it just makes the red pop. Now I'm going to splatter it with a little bit of water and some of my DIY distress sprays to add a little bit more color and texture. After everything has time to dry, I go ahead and trim down the panel so that I can put it on the front of a card base. I did decide that I wanted to mat this one, though, so I'm going to mat this onto some red foil cardstock and then trim that down as well. However, I felt there was something missing, so I'm going to add some foil to the front of my card base. I'm running some double-sided adhesive tape along the edges, the only part of the card that's going to show behind my front panel. That way I can adhere some of that foil down onto that double-sided adhesive tape. And I just love the way it comes out, and it winds up showing a lot of that sunburst. It is Starburst. That Starburst design. This just looks so lovely. And to protect the other side of my card base, I just put down some purple tape, and that worked just fine. Didn't actually need it, but it was a just in case. Now I'm just going to adhere that down with my art glitter glue, and that is going to pretty much finish up the card. Did decide to add a few baubles and gems to the front of the card, though, as the final touch. Here's a final look at my 3 cards. They were so much fun to make, and I really hope that they inspire you to make something as well. Here's another video that I know you'll enjoy. Thank you so much for joining me today, and remember, if I can make it, you can too.